We have the Rex Gibson.
Well, Nena kawana o te tahi, tēnā koutou katoa. My name's Rex Gibson, and riding shotgun here is Wenki Chen. Wenki is here because we work together a lot. He's a long-term contributor to the Christchurch Multicultural Council, formerly the Ethnic Council, and he's also a trustee at the Christchurch Migrant Centre. I'm here as a person who wants to make a submission in relation to where the Strengthening Communities grant sits in the Council's priorities. I'm here because I'm the Tangata Whenua co-chair of One Voice Te Reo Kotahi. That's an umbrella organisation that represents the interests of 130 plus NGO and community groups. I'm here as a member of the Kahui Kaumatua of Te Runaka Ki Otatahi or Kaitahu Trust. I'm also here as the trustee of the Russian-New Zealand Business Council Charitable Trust, which probably doesn't seem to fit here, but it's actually a group that assists a particular sector of migrants, as is I'm also a trustee of the Reunite. It's a family reunification refugee charitable trust, and my main occupation is as manager of the Christchurch Migrant Centre. I'm also a company director in a couple of areas, but that's not relevant to this. My comments on the funding review pertain to a couple of proposals. Firstly, that the Council hold the Strengthening Communities Fund at last year's level this year, and secondly, that they decrease the amount in the future. They're both illogical propositions in my view, and I hope to explain why I think that. The Deputy Mayor recently told us at the Housing Forum that the city had lost 11,000 households. 11,000 houses was her word, households is my word. That's 11,000 people, that's perhaps the population of Timaru, that have moved, 11,000 households have moved in the city. That's had a twofold effect for community groups. The areas where the households have come from have lost a mixture of their contributors and their recipients of the community activities and services. In many cases, complete reorganisation of these activities and services is needed in those areas. The second effect is that the other areas that now house these relocated people have to cater for major increases in numbers and usually major changes in emphasis. Although some of those 11,000 householders left the city, we're also experiencing an influx of migrant workers from across New Zealand and overseas. These people have short-term and medium-term needs in both social integration and their personal well-being that add to the pressure of those groups that are supported by the CCC's Strengthening Communities grant. That's the NGOs and the community groups. That increase in migrant workers has dramatically affected the work at the Christchurch Migrant Centre. The recent opening of the Philippine Community Support Service was a great thing. It was a great partnership between community and the centre, and it was made possible partly by a lotteries grant and partly by the CCC, Strengthening Community grant, supporting the migrant centre's contribution to that effort. It's a good model. The downside is, of course, migrant workers are hard to attract funding to support, and it relies incredibly on voluntary labour. Although they are here in significant numbers, the Filipinos are not the only migrant tradespeople here. I think you're all aware of that. You know, we've got workers here from Ireland, England, Asia, South America, quite an interesting little group from there, and Europe, particularly Eastern Europe. Now, they all struggle with our bureaucracies. Our bureaucratic systems are unique and, of course, even confusing for most New Zealanders. For this reason, social services that are funded and supported by this grant act as interpreters of our bureaucracies for much of their time, and they're quite successful in this. They're also vital in building links with these migrants and channeling them into sporting and cultural organisations, as well as their what we call settlement support needs. The need for services to stabilise and integrate relocated individuals, and number 2, to provide settlement assistance for new migrants, and number 3, to boost the general feelings of well-being in the communities that make up the city, will not decrease over the next 4 or 5 years. They will increase. The speed of the rebuild is still not at the top point. It's still picking up. The challenge for the city is to publicly recognise that growing need. The extra demands outlined just before will significantly impact on the city's reputation as a place to come and live, as a place to come and work on the rebuild. That reputation is already on shaky grounds, with recent issues relating to the exploitation of migrant workers. And believe me, from my position, I can tell you only a fraction of them ever reach the newspapers. There's the housing difficulties, there's the insurance difficulties. That reputation is primarily the concern of the council. All the other parties seem to find convenient reasons to duck for cover when our city's reputation as a host venue is under attack. You've got community groups out there that do their best to support that reputation. The council has the opportunity to raise the status of the work in strengthening its communities, the communities of location and the communities of interest. The council can designate community rebuilding as one of its anchor projects. You can actually get up and say that this is an anchor project of the city, is to rebuild our communities. My personal view is that would require some backup with rhetoric and action. I'm going to be bold here and suggest an allocation of 10 million would be a nice figure to start with because it resonates. 10 million sounds much better than 9.5 or whatever. The fact that it's an increase should signal your concern about portraying the city as a welcoming place to move to, work to and invest in. The sum is realistic for an anchor project. If you look at it overall, it's only a single-digit percentage of what any of the other anchor projects are costing. And you don't seem to have an anchor project that's based around people. Perhaps I'm missing something. It would cater for all the increased needs I've outlined, as well as being a bold statement of our commitment to rebuild the social, cultural and sporting infrastructures of the people of Christchurch City. Now you can fire bullets at me.
Well, not bullets, respectful questions. Phil?
Thank you very much, Rex, and I really love actually the idea of an anchor project for people that you've suggested. One of our earlier submitters asked us about the possibility of restoring community support funding to its original level, going back, I think, well, several years, as you may know, where previously the Strength of Communities funding was cut on a reducing basis. Is that something that you would support too, that perhaps this council work towards doing that?
Well, I've thrown up a figure, but it is only a figure that I've thrown up. But I think that the real thing is to recognise that this need's going to increase, so that in fact there has to be a plan to increase over the next 3 or 4 years the amount. You've got the experts to do the sums. My figure was just one I plucked out of the air because I think it sounds good. But I really would like to see you actually have a plan to recognise that these needs are going to increase, therefore the funding needs to increase.
Glenn?
Thank you. Thanks, Rex. Could you tell us some of the issues of, in relation to housing for a lot of refugee and migrant families?
Right. Well,
the current issues.
The current issues are no different than most people, and I think we don't want to get too hung up on the needs for refugees. The number of refugees in Christchurch is only about 50% of what it was in September 2010, because there have been no new quota refugees arrived. There's only been a handful of family reunification. But I think that for migrants, the issues are exactly the same, but they are made a little bit worse by the fact that migrants are even less aware of how our bureaucracies work, and they're not necessarily council bureaucracy. I'm talking about EQC, I'm talking about insurance companies, I'm talking about building contracts and arrangements, etc.
We know that our libraries we've found that, are a good front door for our migrant peoples to access things, so maybe we can work on that.
Yes, the libraries are, and one of the things we actually run from the Migrant Centre is programs to give people orientation into the libraries. No, your libraries are a great resource, and certainly for migrants.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thank you both for coming, and we look forward to reviewing that.
Just the last bit, I'm here only to support Rex.
Yeah.
Because I've been here for long enough to see Christchurch, how it developed over the 45 years. I've been in Christchurch for 45 years. And for the last 30 years, I've been championing the needs of the ethnic communities. So I've been actively involved. That's how Rex could be as a trustee this year.
That's good. And also a very precious, long-standing council employee. So most welcome as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yep.